Hi, welcome to Unit 6 in our ESLG 489 course. And this unit, very similar to the last three units, we listen to some interviews and we kind of consider some issues that might come up for those students who are originally from a certain place in the world. And in this unit, we're focusing on the Middle East. And also in this unit, it kind of focuses around an interview with Fatima and also with Ragda, two young women in our community. They're both university students, very strong, very successful. So as you listen to Fatima's interview, you might notice something, and that is that she at times talks about race in ways that had she been raised in the U.S., she might not. I've noticed that international students, especially those who have spent more of their time growing up in their home country than in the U.S., they often don't have the taboos that those of us raised in the U.S. have about even talking about race. I know that I'm very hesitant to talk about race at times. It's a taboo that I was raised with. And so you'll hear her kind of rush in. She doesn't have that taboo. And that makes me think about something that I haven't talked about with you yet. And that is a role that you might be likely to have to take on or need to take on with your English language learner students. And that is that of cultural broker. You might have heard the term before. Maybe even it's come up in other courses. But a cultural broker is someone who can be kind of the go-between between the home culture and the school culture, the home culture and the mainstream culture, who can help students kind of think about, rethink, consider, and make sense of the experiences that they have, given both the culture that they've been raised in and the mainstream culture. And so I know that I, as a teacher, have sometimes found students arriving from other countries who have kind of pre-programmed, preconceived biases, often negative, towards certain groups. And often this looks like being afraid of certain groups. And I think one thing that is probably clear to you now is that when we are biased in some way, that means that we've simplified the world. We've made it into a black and white kind of issue. And obviously the world is much bigger and far more complex than we even realize. If this course is working, that's what's happening for you. You're starting to see where you kind of might have painted brush strokes. There's huge amounts of difference and huge amounts of information that we really need to take in to understand clearly. So I myself have at times played a role with students in which I've complicated their world a little bit, complicated their perspective, given them other experiences and other pieces of evidence that the way they saw the world, where one group is this way and another group is this way, it just doesn't fit. It needs to be more complicated and a more granular look, more pixelated, you might say. So I think that's a really important thing to throw out there. Related to that, Fatima talks about something that comes up for her as a student and something she experienced growing up in Syria, and that are some cheating behaviors that she associates with students from the Middle East. So to help us kind of think through this, because cheating is something, and plagiarism is something that will come up for you with students, all students from all different backgrounds. I've done an interview with Tim Seedor, and Tim has had probably 15 years of experience now working with students from the Middle East, moving them from a low level of English to a level of English in which they're ready to tackle university work. And so I thought Tim would be a wonderful resource to help us think through this and make sense of it. And I love the way he does that for us. He's very wise. So I hope you enjoy his assistance with that. I've also included, to support us with that, an article that came out recently about a university in Idaho in which suddenly there was a big group of international students that joined the university, predominantly from the Middle East, and large tensions between the faculty and those international students and those supporting those international students. And cheating behaviors play a role in the discussion. So I thought it might be good for you to kind of see how that played out. And overall, it's not that happy of a story. So that one's a little bit of a bummer. Another thing that Fatima talks about is she talks about how friendly the people in our community have been in responding to her. And I think you'll notice too, she has a very positive approach, a very optimistic approach. She describes, for example, one situation that happens at the mall, an interaction with a woman that might have knocked other students on their butt. It might have made Spokane seem a little more harsh, and she just finds it funny. And she actually probably turned that into a really positive interaction. And so I like how she's experienced the community as very positive. Ragda will describe that as well. But just to complicate that a little bit, I've included an article of something that's happened recently. An apartment complex, I believe it's in Colorado. An apartment complex that was mostly filled with people who were immigrants and refugees. Police interrupted a plot to set off a bomb in that complex, and it looks like it was meant specifically, intended to harm and to scare the immigrant population. And you will, as you read that article, I think you will see the ways that the immigrant and refugee community, how surprised they were because they have been embraced so much by that community. So for me, it's kind of relevant. That's another community where people have been very friendly, and yet this act of hatred at least attempted to occur. So as you listen to Ragda speak, one of the things that you'll hear her talk about is that her mother didn't always attend parent-teacher conferences with her, but it meant so much to Ragda when she did. And she also lets us know that her mom didn't always understand what was going on at the parent-teacher conferences, even though she might have acted at times that she did understand. When I hear Ragda say how much that meant to her that her mom would show up sometimes, what I wanted to do is to support you with some ways that you could make your own parent-teacher conferences with parents like Ragda's mother more successful, so that parents are even more likely to show up to support their students. And so there's an article included for you that gives you some specific strategies that you could use. Now, if you're headed to teach adults in the U.S., you're not headed to K through 12, it might give you some ideas too of how you could support those students in your classroom who are parents. And often there's English language learner teachers teaching the parents, and of course there's English language learner teachers teaching the children. So we can support them in both ways. And finally, Ragda talks about the role that she's had in her family as translator, starting at the age of 8 when she arrived in the U.S. And I didn't include the resource again. We looked at it in a previous unit with Stan and Yelena, looking at Slavic cultural issues. But I just want to iterate again, it's really important for us to think about the socio-cultural role of kids translating for their parents and to think about how kids make sense of that. Okay, I hope you enjoy the resources and the interviews that I've got waiting for you in this unit, and I'll see you in the discussion.